I want to start with a question for you. It sounds simple, but if you actually sit with it, it's a little terrifying.
Okay.
Think about your normal, the way you react to stress, how you talk to your boss, even just the way you sit in a chair. Did you ever actually choose any of that?
Oh.
Or did it just, get installed, like some piece of software you didn't even ask for?
I mean, that's the ultimate nature versus nurture question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we usually think of nurture as this, I don't know, this warm, fuzzy thing.
Right.
Today's source material suggests something very different. It basically says what we call normal isn't something we discover about ourselves. It's a default setting.
A default setting.
Yeah, one that was chosen for us before we even knew there were other options.
That's the phrase that just jumped out at me. We're doing a deep dive into a piece called Clearing the Decks, a meditation on the mask by Jaime Hoerricks, a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And I should warn everyone, this is not a 5 steps to be more authentic kind of thing. This is, it's philosophical. It's almost atmospheric.
It really is. Hoerricks even describes the text itself as a threshold, a place before any map.
Which is a fancy way of saying we're kind of going off-road today.
Exactly.
Right.
But it's really important groundwork. She calls it ethical pre-work.
Ethical pre-work.
Yeah, before we can even talk about identity or neurodivergence or personality, we have to look at the mechanism of how we became who we are right now.
And she starts with that computer analogy you just mentioned, the default font.
Right.
She writes, "Normal is not discovered. It is installed. The way a default font is chosen for you before you learn there are other alphabets."
And let's just unpack why that metaphor is so good beyond just being clever. I mean, biologically, the human brain is an energy-saving machine. It hates making new decisions every single second.
Burns too many calories.
It burns way too many calories, so it craves a default. It wants a script.
So it's like when I open a Word document, it's always in what, Calibri or Arial? Yeah. Not because those are the best fonts or they express my soul or anything, but because some engineer at Microsoft just decided that's what happens when you click new.
Precisely. And in this analogy, the engineer is your early environment, your family, your school, your culture, before you even have the language to describe what's going on inside you.
Which she calls the long season without a name.
Exactly that. Before you have that language, you are being formatted. You're being told, this is how we speak, this is how we sit, this is how we deal with anger.
And when you're a kid, you don't know that, Comic Sans or Helvetica even exist. You just assume everyone uses Arial.
You assume Arial's reality. You assume the pattern you're living in is the only pattern. The text says these patterns feel ordinary not because they fit us, but because they were taught early and rewarded often.
That rewarded often part is, it's a little tricky, though. It implies a kind of training.
Like dog training.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, it is. And this brings us to one of the, I think, heavier concepts in the piece. Hoerricks points out that most of us didn't just wake up one morning and decide to shrink. We didn't choose to become smaller.
No, nobody puts diminish my own personality on their to-do list.
No. But we were shown over and over again which versions of ourselves traveled more easily through other people's rooms.
Other people's rooms. I actually stopped on that line for a while. It's such a specific way to describe navigating the world. It's not just traveling through life.
Yeah.
It's traveling through spaces that belong to someone else.
And think about the power dynamic in that. If you're in someone else's room, say a classroom or your parents' living room or later a corporate boardroom, you are a guest.
And guests have rules.
Guests have rules. You learn really fast that if you're too loud or too emotional or too weird, you bump into the furniture. You cause friction.
And friction is bad. Friction gets you in trouble. Friction gets you those weird looks.
Exactly. So you learn to be aerodynamic. You prune away the parts of yourself that bump into things. You shrink, not because you want to, but because it's the only way to get through the room without crashing.
So, okay, if that's the installation phase, where we get formatted to fit the room, we need to talk about what keeps that format running, the mask.
Right.
Now, usually when we talk about masking, especially in like mental health circles, we talk about it like it's a tool. Like, okay, I'm going to put on my professional face to handle this client. It sounds like an active choice.
Right.
But Hoerricks just flips that completely upside down. She says masking isn't strategy. She calls it weather.
This is where we have to get out of our heads for a minute and into our bodies, because what she's describing is a somatic experience, not a cognitive one. She talks about pressure systems moving across the body.
Okay, help me ground that. Pressure systems. What does that actually look like on a Tuesday
Well,
morning.
think about when you walk into a room where two people have just been arguing.
Yep.
They're not talking, but the air feels thick. You feel that tightness in your chest, your stomach drops. That's a pressure system. You haven't thought anything yet, but your body is already reacting.
Oh, I know that feeling so well. It's like my shoulders are touching my ears before I even say hello.
Exactly. The text says the body learns when to brighten, when to cloud over, and when to pretend the storm has already passed. Notice the lack of agency in that.
Right.
You don't tell a barometer to drop, it just drops because the atmospheric pressure changed.
That makes the mask sound less like a disguise and more like, I don't know, a reflex, a survival reflex.
It is a survival reflex. There's a line in the piece that I think is the anchor for this whole section. It's
Yeah.
the face learns its duties before the heart learns its language.
Wow. That is. Well, it's pretty bleak, isn't it? The face learned its duties. It sounds like child labor.
It essentially is emotional labor learned in childhood. Before a kid even has the words to say, I feel unsafe or I feel overwhelmed, that's the heart learning its language. Their face already knows it needs to smile to keep mom happy.
Or look serious to keep the teacher from yelling.
Yes. The muscles learn the job before the mind even understands what the work is.
And the kicker is, we get rewarded for this trauma response. We don't call it fawning or dissociation.
No, of course not. We call it maturity. We call it professionalism. We call it having great social skills.
Oh, look at him. He's so well behaved.
Right. But Hoerricks is just stripping away all those polite labels and calling it what it is. Training. You were trained to endure the weather in other people's rooms.
Okay, so we're stuck in this default font. We're getting battered by these pressure systems, shrinking ourselves to fit. I mean, it sounds exhausting.
It is.
And usually this is the part of the deep dive where we'd say, so go find out who you really are. Go get a diagnosis. Find your tribe.
And this is where Hoerricks just pumps the brakes. Hard.
Yeah, she introduces this idea of the ethical pause. And honestly, this was the part I struggled with at first. Because she warns against rushing to find a new name for ourselves. She says identity work can be a kindness, but it can also be a second colonization.
It's a really provocative term, colonization. But let's unpack it. What happens when a power colonizes a territory? They don't just take the land, they rename everything.
They draw new maps.
They impose a whole new structure on what was already there.
So you're saying, if I realize I've been masking my whole life, and I rush out and say, aha, I'm actually, and then insert whatever label, I might just be swapping one colonizer for another.
You could be. Think about it. Let's say you realize the default font just doesn't fit you. So you go to a psychiatrist or you go on TikTok and you find a new label. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, you identify as neurodivergent.
Sure.
That can be incredibly liberating. It can be a kindness, like she says.
Of course, it explains why the weather hurts so much.
Exactly. But Hoerricks warns that names can also conscript. And conscription is a military draft. If I hand you a label, I might just be handing you a uniform. I might be saying, okay, you're not normal anymore, now you're this, and people like this act in these specific ways.
Ah, I see. So instead of just being me, this messy, complex person, I start performing the symptoms of my diagnosis.
Yes. You trade the normal mask for the diagnosis mask. You haven't actually cleared the decks, you've just changed the costume. She writes, I do not want to hand you another uniform and call it insight.
It's such a subtle distinction, but it's huge. It's like, imagine being really tall, and everyone tells you, oh, you're tall, here's a basketball jersey, go play.
Yeah.
Maybe I hate basketball, but because I fit the description, I get conscripted into the team.
That is a perfect analogy. And for someone who has spent their whole life trying to please others, trying to travel easily through rooms, that temptation to put on the jersey is overwhelming.
Of course it is.
Because it's a script. It tells you who to be. It feels safer than just being nothing.
So that word again, safety.
Yeah.
We are just looking for a room where we finally know the rules.
Which leads us to the final, and I think the most relatable metaphor in the text, the student reflex.
Oh man, this one got me. I felt very seen, and not in a good way.
I think a lot of high achievers probably feel called out by this one.
She writes that many of us meet new ideas, even ideas about our own healing, the way a student meets an exam.
It's that scanning behavior. You walk into a situation, a therapy session, a date, even just reading a book like this, and your internal radar just goes up.
Yeah.
You're scanning for the correct posture. You're looking for the acceptable vocabulary.
I do this all the time. Even in therapy, I'll catch myself thinking, am I explaining my trauma correctly? Is this what the therapist wants to hear? Am I having a breakthrough yet? I'm trying to get an A+ in therapy.
Right. Look how self-aware I am, Doc. Give me a gold star. But think about what that actually is.
It's the mask again.
It is the mask again. That is the default font trying to optimize itself. You aren't actually being vulnerable. You are performing vulnerability.
Because I'm trying to pass. I'm trying to find the version of myself that is most likely to pass, whatever the test is.
And as long as you are trying to pass the test, you're not safe. You are still working. You're still traveling through someone else's room, just trying not to bump the furniture.
So how do we stop? Because Hoerricks talks about refusing the transaction. She talks about Gestalt knowing. What does that actually mean for the listener who's driving to work right now thinking, okay, great, I'm a fake, now what?
Well, first, Gestalt just means the whole. The idea that something is more than the sum of its parts. So what Hoerricks is suggesting is that true self-knowledge, the kind that isn't just another uniform, it arrives all at once, fully formed.
Okay.
But it can only arrive if the room is quiet.
And we are really, really bad at quiet.
We're terrified of it because the noise, the scanning, the student reflex, all that stuff was keeping us safe. Silence feels dangerous. Silence feels like the teacher is about to yell at you for not knowing the answer.
But she says the goal is to provide a room to sit in where no answers will be graded.
That is the ethical pause. It's creating a space where you're not trying to fix yourself or name yourself or improve yourself. You are just stopping.
That sounds incredibly passive, though. Just stop.
It's actually incredibly active. It takes a massive amount of effort to not pick up the pencil and start taking the test. It takes courage to refuse the transaction of, I will perform for you, and in return, you will give me belonging.
It's like picturing yourself walking into an exam room, sitting at the desk, looking at the proctor, and just not picking up the pen. Just sitting there.
The anxiety that would provoke?
It would be unbearable.
But that is the work. That is the clearing of the decks. If you can sit in that anxiety without rushing to fix it with a label or a performance, eventually the weather clears. And whatever is left sitting in that chair,
That's you.
that's actually you.
It's funny. We usually end these deep dives with a call to action. Go do this. Try this hack.
Right.
But today, the call to action is basically a call to inaction.
It is. It's a call to stop colonizing your own mind.
So let's try to summarize this strange journey we've been on. Because we went from fonts to weather to exams.
We started with the realization that normal is installed. It's a default font chosen by our environment to keep us, efficient and compliant.
Then we talked about the cost of that installation, the shrinking, the way we learn to navigate other people's rooms by making ourselves smaller, and how we develop masks not as disguises, but as weather systems.
Bodily reactions to pressure.
Right. Then we looked at the trap of the second colonization, the danger of rushing to new labels just because we need a new uniform to wear.
And finally, the student reflex, our deep-seated need to pass the test, even when the test is our own identity.
It really is a meditation. It's not something you solve. It's something you just have to sit with.
And that's okay. We're so used to information being transactional. I learned this, now I can do that. This text asks for something else entirely. It just asks for presence.
So here's the thought we want to leave you with. And I'll warn you, it's not a comfortable one. I want you to picture yourself back in that exam room we talked about.
The room where you're usually scanning for the right answer, scanning for the behavior that will keep you safe.
If you stopped treating your identity like a test you have to pass, if you stopped looking for the uniform that lets you travel through the world without friction, if you just put down the pencil and refused to take the exam.
Who or what would be left sitting in the room?
That's the question. And for once, there is no grade for the answer. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Take care.